Warm welcome to the virtual publication launch of the SDG 16 Situation Report, a review of key developmental challenges in Africa through the lens of peace, justice, and strong institutions. This event is co-organized by the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, CSVR, and the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP, two institutions deeply committed to advancing peace, justice, and sustainable development across our continent. Before we begin, a few virtual guidelines. Please note that there is interpretation available, and please use the chat box to share your reflections and questions during the Q&A session. The session is being recorded, and the report will be made available after today's launch. It is now my pleasure to take you through today's program. And with SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions lies at the heart of sustainable development. And without progress here, achieving the broader 2030 agenda becomes impossible. This report provides timely, evidence-based insights into the challenges and opportunities before us. I encourage all participants to actively engage in this conversation about shaping Africa's future. And let us now hear from the executive directors of our organizing partners. Our first speaker is Ms. Anna Moyo-Kopetwa, the executive director of CSVR. Ms. Moyo-Kopetwa is a human rights lawyer with extensive experience in legal, transitional justice, human rights, peace and security, gender and violence prevention fields. She has developed important soft law instruments for policymakers, civil society groups, and victim communities, and her expertise in transitional justice and post-conflict transformation has seen her present and brief high-level platforms involving governments, embassies, academia, and CSOs at national, regional, continental, and global levels. It is my honor to welcome Ms. Moyo-Kopetwa.
Hi, Annie. Anna should be joining now. She's just having a small technical issue.
Okay, sure. Then if I can hand over then to Madam Lavinia Ademensa and introduce her if she's in the room as well. Could you confirm? Okay, if we just give it a second for our directors to join us. Thanks.
Anna is here, Kathy.
Hi, Anna. If Yes, so it's my honor to welcome Ms. Anna Moyo-Kopetwa, and over to you, Anna.
Heavy Ann, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear.
Can everyone hear me? Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It is my singular honor to welcome everyone to this launch of the situation report that looks at key developmental challenges in Africa through the lens of SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. First, I would like to take a moment to thank our partners, WANEP, who we have worked very well together since the signing of our MOU last year in producing this report. This report highlights some of the developmental challenges on the African continent with the focus on the 5 core regions of the African Union and looking specifically at the issues of conflicts, issues of gross human rights violations, issues of transitions, violent extremism, amongst other things, and also weaves through some of the common themes across the different regions when it comes to conflicts, when it comes to threats to peace and justice on the continent, as well as developmental challenges. It provides also a taking stock of the situation on the continent when it comes to achieving or making strides towards achieving SDG Goal 16. Peace and justice remains elusive for many of our communities and many of our societies on the African continent. We still experience a number of cycles of wars and conflicts in a number of our national contexts. Some of our conflicts cross borders as transnational conflicts, and some take a regional dimension. Some countries get affected by the very same conflict, or rather manifestation thereof. The need, therefore, for collaboration in achieving peace, justice, and building stronger institutions is more eminent now than it has ever been before. As we look at the SDGs 30, we are not far from the expiry date. We are literally right in the middle, at the center of their tenure. Therefore, this review and analysis is critical because it contributes to the next and what needs to be done if we are to make Goal 16 a reality on the continent, if we are to pursue justice, if we are to achieve peace, and if we are to build strong institutions aimed at achieving justice and peace. Our work is really cut out for us. As we have seen, as we will see on this report, as both WANEP and CSVR will highlight some of the findings, key findings and the analysis through this research that came out of this report and the recommendations thereof on how we can actualize SDG Goal 16 going forward, particularly the next half of the tenure of the SDGs. Without much further ado, I really want to thank our partners once again, WANEP for this sterling work. I thank also the advocacy team within the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation that has also contributed immensely to the research in the development of this report. I invite all of us to engage with the report, to engage as well in reflections thereof, engage also with the findings in really probing and reflecting on what next, how can we make the next 5 years of the tenure of the SDGs a reality, particularly when it comes to achieving, or at least making strides towards achieving SDG Goal 16. I wish all of us also candid conversations and honest conversations around the role that we can play as civil society and different stakeholders on the continent towards achieving peace in the very areas and spheres of influence that we occupy. As civil society organizations, as think tanks, as developmental partners, as international organizations, as member states, as regional economic communities, as African Union organs, and so forth. as funders, as victims of some of this violence and violations that are articulated in the report. We all have a role to play. And true to the mantra of the SDGs, we must make sure that we leave no one behind, particularly when it comes to active participation towards creating lasting change and bringing about transformation that leads us to the actualization of SDG Goal 16 and other SDG goals that also contribute in one way or another to SDG 16. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Our next speaker is Ms. Lavinia Ademensa, the first female executive director of OneApp, a position which she has held since September 2024. Ms. Ademensa is a renowned peace, security, governance, and development practitioner with over 30 years of experience. She has worked in some of Africa's most complex contexts, including Rwanda and Cote d'Ivoire, and contributed to peace processes in Liberia and Burundi. Her expertise spans security sector governance, election management, violent extremism, dialogue, mediation, and building peace infrastructures. She has also held senior leadership roles at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center and worked internationally with organizations such as International Alert in the UK. We are privileged to have Ms. Lavinia Ademensa here, and it's my honor to welcome her. Over to you.
Hello. Hello, Madam Moderator. Thank you very much for the introduction. I know everyone will be expecting the Executive Director to be speaking at the moment, but she's also trapped in between some high-level visits, and definitely before the end of this activity, she will definitely join us. But just to fill in this particular gap, I think it's important for us to recognize the support and efforts that this partnership has been able to achieve, particularly with regards to this current report launch. So for OneApp, we value collaborative efforts, and that is why we were able to have an MOU with CSVR, which was signed in Accra in 2024. And with that, we plan to explore practice, learning, and joint peace and security programs on the continent. The collaboration focuses on joint initiatives and advanced peace building, transitional justice, and reconciliation, particularly in post-conflict context. In line with the implementation of the partnership framework, the two organizations, OneApp and CSVR, have commissioned this report on the key developmental challenges in Africa from a perspective of peace, justice, and strong institutions, aiming to contribute to knowledge building and operational learning. This report sheds light on the pressing challenges to peace, justice, and institutional resilience on our continent. More importantly, it highlights opportunities for collaborative action in advancing Sustainable Development Goal 16 and aligning it with the aspiration of the African Union Agenda 2063, particularly Aspiration 4, which talks about prosperous and peaceful Africa, and Aspiration 7 as well, which has a direct correlation with peace and security. So today's discussion could not come at a more critical moment. Africa continues to confront complex and interconnected pressures, protracted armed conflict, evolving geopolitical alignments, the profound effect of climate change, and the urgent need for governance that is inclusive, accountable, and gender responsive. In this context, SDG 16 is not just another development target or an indicator, but it is a cornerstone for Africa's future, offering a framework for building peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, and for strengthening institutions that are effective and trusted by the people. Peace and stability remain the foundation on which economic growth, social progress, and sustainable development must thrive. So peace is significant. It's a significant milestone in Africa's development. So countries in the Sahel, for example, have undergone prolonged conflict that have led to significant humanitarian challenges and hindered economic growth. So in those contexts, without peace, it is almost impossible to achieve any other development objectives. Justice is equally critical, and it ensures that all people have access to legal protections and their rights are protected. So in countries where judicial systems are weak, and we have that in a number of countries across the continent, there is often a lack of responsibility for crimes, contributing to a culture of impunity that undermines social cohesion and trust in institutions. So our experience as WANEP over the years has been to build hybrid institutions, strong institutions, and fundamentally equipping them to advance peace and security and justice issues. That is why our work around supporting peace infrastructures from the bottom up is a key focus in our current strategic plan. So we have been able to support institutions across the continent from the West Africa perspective, and now we have even been invited by other RECs like ICAS to support the civil society in Central Africa, and also supporting Eastern Africa, ECONET, and SAPEC and SACOD in Southern Africa, all to operationalize a continental early warning system within the framework of the African peace and security architecture. That is the modest contribution WANEP can make when it comes to our experience within the field. So when institutions like that are improved and they are resilient, then we'll talk about how we're going to make incremental progress in achieving the SDG, particularly SDG 16. So at this point, WANEP is appreciative of the receptiveness of CSVR to work with us across the continent. And we are hopeful and looking forward to to further opportunity where we can continue to expand and build on knowledge, manage knowledge, and be able to ensure that our peace and security on the continent is sustained. So this vision should be driven by the fact that we need to not only provide preventive measures, but also ensure that we make our response collective and inclusive. And we're going to continue in this endeavor to continue to work together under the current MOU between CSVR and WANEP. So with these few words, and until the executive director also joins online and maybe add a few more pointers to what we have shared, I wish us all, partners, and our respected guests a happy launch. And also to say to us all a happy International Peace Day that we just celebrated 2 days ago. Thank you so much, and I wish you all fruitful deliberations.
Thank you so much for that. and for those inspiring remarks that frame the significance of today's launch. Just again to note
So,
that
Kathy, over to you.
interpretation. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, sorry. And just the housekeeping interpretation is available in French and English. And if I may please request the panelists to switch on their cameras when they are speaking. It is now my honor to introduce our keynote contributor, Dr. Victor Doke, Research Fellow and Lecturer at the Faculty of Academic Affairs at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Dr. Doke holds a PhD in International Studies with a focus on conflict resolution from Hiroshima City University in Japan, and advanced degrees in Peace and Development Studies, Conflict Management, and Philosophy. He lectures on theories and analysis in conflict, peace, and security, and his research interests cover violent armed conflict, electoral violence, conflict resolution, mediation, negotiation, and the role of civil society. Dr. Doke has authored several scholarly works on conflict prevention and violent extremism in West Africa, and brings both academic depth and practical experience, including with the UNHCR. Dr. Doke, we are honored to have you as our keynote contributor. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all and other co-panelists. I hope I'm very audible enough. If not, you can alert me to raise my voice. And I'm sorry if there are background noises, emanating through the audio. I had to, return back to the office because the network problem is a challenge, but I hope this will do. I thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm very honored to do this with regards to reviewing the very important report that has been put together by these two reputable agencies. I'll move straight into it, and then what I'll do first of all is to give I have only 10 minutes as the agenda states. I'll talk on the content of the report, and then I'll look at the perspectives of the SDG 16 and how we are doing as a continent, and then also reiterate some challenges and then opportunities with regards to that. So first off, this is a very extensive work that has been done, well structured, looking at region by region, specifically North, Central, West, East, and Southern Africa, before addressing very cross-cutting issues. Now, the report itself ties its findings to the SDG 16, which looks at peace, justice, and strong institutions, and then the AU Agenda 2063, specifically aspiration 3 and 4. Now, we look at how comprehensive it covered. Now, this report, as I've noticed, highlights the political, security, governance, human rights, and migration challenges. Not to forget about the climate challenges across the continent, new and emanating threats which we face daily, radicalization, violent extremism, and whatnot. Now, it doesn't only stress on the failures, but also points at positive examples with how some countries specifically have made strides with regards to politics, security, governance, human rights, and the threats that we face on our continent. Now, this report also links the governance, conflict, socioeconomic inequality, climate change, and then regional cooperation, and then highlights the importance and needs for countries to work at achieving SDG 16, and then solidifying their gains with whatever they have done. Now, issues such as gender-based violence, civic space restrictions, youth radicalization, which have often been overlooked in most reports, were captured. which is very key because you're talking about the youth bulge and how essential they are to development and the issues surrounding the youths relating to violence in Africa as a whole. Now, let me draw on some key insights. Specifically, let me start with Southern Africa. The report highlights the aspect of inequality and corruption, which overshadow stable governance systems, which is very key for us to understand what is happening in the Southern African enclave. So for East Africa, the report highlights the fragility in most of the areas there, the conflicts that countries face in that enclave, the governance challenge, the human rights issues that are there, corruption and whatnot. For West Africa, what I noticed about the report is that the issues about coups, unconstitutional change of government through manipulation of term limits and extending them, violent extremism, which is dominating, maritime insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea, which is very much highlighted in this report. And then let's come to Central Africa. What are the issues the report highlighted? Institutional fragility, entrenched leadership, which is a problem. Displacement crisis, which goes to what? Internal displacement, people seeking asylum, human rights abuses and camps and whatnot, and the crisis associated with all of these things, which are central and captured by the report. Then North Africa, we get to learn about the democratic promises, that have been made and largely unmet, which is very problematic. Authoritarianism, which is persistent, migration and extremism, which are pressing issues that need to be what? Tackled. Now, the depth of this report relies heavily, yes, on secondary sources, which is very also important. Hopefully, I know in the future we'll look at how we can blend in, primary or first-hand information with regards to key respondents to, make it more richer. But nonetheless, it doesn't take away the shine of this particular report. While recommendations are good, they remain very broad and aspirational. So you can talk about strengthening governance. And what is the roadmap with regards to strengthening governance is what we need to build more in, subsequent reports to, draw down or highlight more on very key specific, issues. Now let's look at the overall assessment of this wonderful report. It is very insightful and it is very timely. We're looking at the issues that we are facing here, which we talk about African solutions to African problems. And then it gives us an indication of how we are doing as a continent, and then the realities we have to face, leadership crisis, the issues about corruption, management, and all of that. And not to forget about the aspect of the development goals that we have to meet. Where are we as a continent? Now, in its relevance, it provides insight and then educational, aspect with regards to key information for policymakers, the organs with regards to the AU, civil society actors, we academia, also researchers and whatnot. So the value of this report lies in providing a continental overview or synopsis of governance and then the security trends with its associated challenges, which is very useful when you are looking at comparative analysis with other, countries or region by region. Now, let me draw down to the aspect of the perspectives of this report on the SDG 16 and how we are doing as a continent as a whole, albeit challenges and then opportunities. So, how are we doing, generally as a continent? We are making some progress. I know, realists will argue that we are not getting things done, but I think we should pat ourselves on the back and say we are making some progress. A few countries have shown the light. They have, been able to assess situations, conduct risk assessment with regards to the threats that they face, and have been able to, come up with solutions or approaches to deal with them. We're talking about democracy deficits in some countries. We're talking about the rule of law, accountability with regards to institutions, and how we can make our institutions very resilient and accountable. Now, with regards to the overall aspect of the SDG 16, the continent is lagging behind in achieving the SDG 16. Now, why so? There are many other challenges: governance, security, human rights challenges, corruption, and whatnot. And once we deal with all these impediments, then we can be sure to say we are on the right, trajectory to achieving the SDG by the set date 2030. But if not, then it means we would still have challenges in achieving this specific, development goal. So key challenges that I've identified: governance deficits, which includes what political instability, and I tie this to the issue about unconstitutional change of governance. We know about states that are struggling with weak institutions, and for every state to thrive, you need to have a robust and resilient state institution, which can then perform its mandate. These states who are robust and resilient will now be able to fight corruption, and then act as a check and balance to the executive that wields so much power, which is another topic for another day to discuss. Now, we know about the frequent, changes of government unconstitutionally through coups and all of that in the West, in Central Africa, which signifies fragility and state collapse in most cases. What is the way to get back? That is what we are looking at. The civic space is being, shrunk most often. There isn't an avenue for multi-party democracy. There isn't an avenue for the aspect of what free speech, free association, and whatnot. We hear about journalists, activists who face suppression, jail term for speaking out, their minds and leading, legal demonstrations against vices that we know of. The other aspect with regards to the challenges I would like to talk on is radicalization, violent extremism, and then the various conflicts, i.e., inter-state conflicts that we have. So, looking at the Sahel Lake Chad Basin, we know about the issue of Boko Haram, the armed groups in general, which continue to destabilize, the relative peace in those regions. Come to the Horn of Africa. We are looking at how conflict has exposed, the issues, the challenges, and the human rights abuses in those areas. In North Africa, we are looking at the militia who are also causing havoc in states over there, migration issues, insecurity, terrorism, which is linked to the Middle East and whatnot. All these amounts to how we see or project the continent in general when it comes to violent extremism and conflict. Then now, let's talk about social justice. And social justice can be linked to the human rights, civic freedoms, free speech, free press, free assembly, free movement, which is restricted in many states. You're looking about gender-based violence, which is rampant, and limited legal representations or limited legal assistance to fight this menace. Marginalized groups continue to face issues about inequality. We're talking about migrants or asylum seekers who also face issues about inequality, not having access to social care or social services. And all these have been often excluded from what the aspect of assessing justice. So who fights on their behalf? And this ties to we having strong institutions and resilient state agencies who now would have to look at all these issues holistically. Now, I'd like to talk about the socioeconomic aspect also, which largely most African states have sort of not included in their agenda or high drive when it comes to development. Socioeconomic ties to you having a stable democracy or development, and then security as a whole. There's high poverty rate. We are talking about high employment drive, which leads to what radicalization. So when the youths are not finding ways to earn a living or not engaged in what very meaningful employment, then what happens? The numbers that we have with regards to unemployment, region by region or individual states, sets a strong warning to us, which is a security threat in itself. It leads to unrest. It disrupts the democratic gains of these, countries that have been able to make some gains with regards to democracy and then politics as a whole. Now, so for example, let's talk about Southern Africa, which is a paradox of strong democracies but extreme inequality, as has been identified. We are talking about the climate and then environmental issues. Climate changes worsen competition over land resources, which emanates or results into conflict. Rising displacements, people seeking asylum due to what? Climate conflicts, environmental conflicts, migration problems with fuel insecurity in regions such as the Horn of Africa and Sahel. So all these sends a signal that we have challenges on our hands. So in essence, this report has done a good job in highlighting what needs to be done when it comes to their recommendations, and then tells us or gives a vivid picture of the problems that exist, which does not take away the fact that we need to come together as a people. The space of the civil society needs to be what revamped, as I put it that way, because we know the work that civil society does in whole when it comes to issues about conflict, migration, climate issues, and whatnot. So what can we do? Or what can we look at in terms of opportunities, which countries are, giving positive democratic examples? We look at Botswana, Ghana, Mauritius, or whatnot. Let's look at the sub-regional bodies, the frameworks that we have, especially on the transitional justice policy. Tying to Agenda 2063, we provide a foundation for accountability, reconciliation, and then inclusive governance. Our RECs, regional economic communities, such as ECOWAS, SADC, EAC, what roles are they playing? What challenges are they facing? How can they overcome these challenges? And then tackle the issues about security and stabilize their various regions. We need to look at the aspect of what? Youth and civil engagement. How can we make the youth very vibrant, positively use the youth in development and security to achieve the goal that we want to achieve? And then also looking at the age of, digital technology. How can we harness or how can we take advantage to expand the digital aspect in our governance, e-participation, open data platforms and whatnot, digital use for peace and security, and then to counter or curb issues about climate change, security, and then all of that. And then we should also look at global partnerships, which is very key. I know issues about funding is a challenge. How can we look at the aspect of funding, projects that seek to curb these challenges ourselves before, partners come in? So in all, I think from my very perspective, the political will, which I see is the biggest barrier to, implementing or curbing most of these challenges. We need a political will. We need the laws to be relooked at. Frameworks exist and all of that, which ones do we need to specifically implement, and which one needs to be relooked at for us to have, a very good roadmap when it comes to tackling the issues about peace, security, and then achieving our SDG 16. So in all these opportunities, and then the goal to have a very robust team. We can't fight terrorism alone. We need everybody on board. We cannot fight issues about climate change, migration alone. Everybody needs to come on board so we can address all these issues and then holistically say we are getting somewhere. So regionalism is key. We are also looking at the aspect of hegemony, which is key in the various regions we are looking at. And then our hegemonic agencies or institutions can lead the way for us to achieve our SDG 16. The process may be slow or uneven, but I think holistically we can say, with regards to what has been highlighted in this report, we need to do more and then curb the ills that we face. Other than that, then we'll be creating more problems for ourselves. But I think the reality is that this is not just an ordinary report. It entails a lot of information. It gives data. It gives an idea about what policymakers, governments, institutions should do with regards to our goal and mandate when it comes to peace, justice. I think I'll end my analysis here and then we'll continue later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Dorke, for such a thought-provoking and insightful keynote. We now move to the presentation of the report's finding, which will be shared by members of the research team. Allow me to introduce them briefly. Mr. Ansumane Suarez serves as the Regional Analyst for Democracy and Governance at OneNet. He has over a decade of experience working with community-based organizations across 15 West African countries on conflict prevention and peace building. He also manages OneNet's Peace Monitoring Center, leads training of conflict monitors, and has written extensively on democratic governance, climate change, and civilian protection in armed conflict. Excuse me. Mr. Bobwin Valerie is an advocacy specialist at CSVR. His work focuses on integrating transitional justice tools into policy responses to radicalism and violent extremism, moving away from securitized approaches. He has managed projects across the Sahel and engaged in advocacy in Sudan, Cameroon, Somalia, the Gambia, and South Sudan. He has also joined AU-UN Migration Youth Ambassador to Central Africa, and his research interests include transitional justice, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. Together, they will take us through the key trends, findings, and recommendations of the SDG 16 situation report. Over to you.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kati. Before I start, I would like to sincerely thank my executive director and the program director for trusting us to lead this initiative in partnership with the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. And also thank my colleague who also contributed to this initiative. And thank also Dr. Valerie for working with us on this initiative. So having said that, If you allow me, because my internet is not stable, I'm in Guinea for the election. And since Sunday, the internet has not been good at all. So if you allow me just to off my camera for now, later, when the internet gets good, I will try to activate it. Thank you very much. So I would like to start this presentation with an opening question, just for us to reflect on what we are going to be discussing throughout this event. What is this question? So which type of governance system do we want in Africa? And I'm not saying that we should answer right now. As I said, it's going to inform some of the things we'll be discussing throughout this event. A question as simple as this goes right to the heart of Africa's current governance challenges. Because the type of governance we choose, whether inclusive or exclusive, visionary or short-sighted, will determine the continent's development, democratic consolidation, and its ability to sustain peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, based on our current research and analysis, here is an overview of the key governance deficit confronting Africa today. So for the sake of those who want to take note, I would like to just highlight first the 9 governance deficits or challenges we found during our research. So first is weak state institutions. Second, corruption and impunity. Third, centralized and exclusive power structures. Democratic backsliding, poor leadership and political culture, colonial legacy and identity disintegration, economic dependency and inequalities, security challenges and governance, declining civil liberty in Africa. These are the 9 governance challenge or deficits we found during our research. Going back to the first challenge, which has to do with the weak state institution. Many countries in Africa continue to struggle with fragile institutions. These weak institutions or systems are unable to effectively deliver public services, reinforce laws, or provide security, resulting in poor service delivery, widespread frustration, insecurity, and a decline in state legitimacy. So what we just highlighted, these are some of the things that are now contributing to many state legitimacy across Africa. When it comes to corruption and impunity, you agree with me that corruption remains pervasive and entrenched across all sectors in Africa. Many public officials and ordinary citizens act with impunity, while transparency and accountability mechanisms remain weak. This breeds public mistrust in government and also discourages much needed foreign investment across the continent. Talking about the centralized and exclusive power structures, what is also important for us to understand is that when it comes to Africa, political power is often concentrated in the hand of few and with little room for inclusivity. And such inclusion and exclusion marginalize minority, for grievances, and in some instances drives violent conflict in many communities across Africa. Democratic backsliding. For the past 5 or 6 years, we have witnessed a worrying retreat of democratic governance, especially in West and Central Africa. So these regions have been characterized by military coup, constitutional manipulation to extend stay in power, shrinking opposition space, and curtailing civil society freedom are becoming disturbingly common in Africa. So let me just give an example here, just to illustrate what I just said right now about democratic backsliding. I would like to cite the example of Guinea. We all remember in 2020, after President Alpha Conde served 2 terms. So he decided to change the constitution and run for another 3rd term. And with all the calls, all the protests that took place in the country, the then government decided to go ahead. And we also what happened a few months later, a coup was organized and which led to the overthrow of President Alpha Conde. Civil society organizations were very particular about it. But as I said, there were demonstrations, and some of these demonstrations were suppressed and people were killed. And I remember when the coup happened, these are some of the reasons that the military highlighted for their intervention in politics. So talking about poor leadership and political culture, we also notice that leadership deficits remains a core challenge across Africa. Too often, personal or party interests are prioritized over national development. Patronage system and authoritarian tendencies are fostered power struggle at various levels of governance in Africa, which are suffocating visionary leadership across the continent. So talking about the colonial legacy and identity fragmentation or disintegration. So we all know that the artificial colonial borders we have in Africa left behind fractured social contract. And today in Africa, ethnic, tribal, and regional divisions continue to undermine national unity and also create significant barriers to inclusive governance and regional integration across Africa. So, sometimes we blame, colonialism has some of the reasons for our current predicament. But as Africans, as people of Africa, what have we done concretely, in the continent to change that legacy? So it's something that is a question that I'm asking, which is also a pointer for another discussions, not today, but in our future engagement. And I would also like to cite an example, especially when you take West Africa. You take all the 50 countries of West Africa. we have a lot of commonalities, and the people are the same in terms of structure, in terms of culture. We have a lot in common. But sometimes what pisses me off, sometimes when you reach at some of the airport, some of the comments you get is like, are you a foreigner? Are you not from this country? So for me, that shouldn't be the case, because as I said, we have a lot in common, and what we have in common, could serve a solution to some of this problem we are talking about when it comes to, tribalism, ethnic, and regional divisions. So talking about economy dependency and inequalities across Africa, the over dependence on external aid and natural resources weakens domestic accountability. Growing income inequality, coupled with limited opportunity for African youthful population, continue to fuel frustration, irregular migration, and instability across Africa. Let me just give this example. We all know that when the American government decided to close USAID, and we also the consequences of that in many countries. So it shows that Africa, after 60 years of independence, we still rely heavily on external aid. And for me, that is not the way. It's not sustainable. We have to think out of the box and making sure that we also, as a continent, as countries, make sure that we also find solutions to some of these problems we face in Africa. Talking about the security challenges and governance in Africa, you can bear with me that poor governance and insecurity remains mutually reinforcing. Weak institutions weaken insecurity, and in turn, the government, instead of resolving those problems, they oftentimes resort to military approach. And we all know that kinetic approach, of course, is one of the solutions, but can it be a lasting solution to some of the problems we are facing in Africa? Recently, to be more specific, I was in northern Ghana for a facilitation, and participants who were there came from the Savannah region, and most of them came from the Tuna Kalba, Swala Tuna Kalba district. And what I heard, regarding the Binyiri conflict, opened my minds on a lot of things. Some of the challenges we are having when it comes to peace and security, and the approach the state use to address some of those things are rather creating more problems than finding solution to some of those issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, we also identify declining civil liberty, and I think Doc, in his presentation, extensively spoke about that. And we all believe that civil space is shrinking across the continent. Freedom of expression, media independence, and civil society activism face sustained repression across the continent, often under the pretext of counter-terrorism or digital surveillance. Journalists, activists, and citizens who speak out continue to be harassed. Either they harass you or you are intimidated. And those who insist sometimes, are killed. These are some of the realities we found, across Africa. And I would also like to cite one example when it comes to digital surveillance. Benin is one of the example for that. In that country, whenever you are talking, whether civil society organization or an activist, whenever you say something, make sure that those things are backed with fact. Otherwise, you find yourself somewhere where you didn't expect. So these are the 9 governance challenges we identify in our research. So, ladies and gentlemen, in my concluding remarks, I would like to say that these findings are not presented to overwhelm you, but to provoke reflection and action. If we agree that these are the governance deficits we face in Africa, then we must urgently ask ourselves again, which type of governance system do we want in Africa? Only by strengthening institutions, promoting inclusivity, and building visionary leadership can Africa hope to advance the SDG 16. Realize the promise of the African Union Agenda 2063 and ensure that peace, justice, and strong institutions are not just aspiration, but reality for African citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Antumani. I don't know, okay, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to also thank everyone before me, Dr. Victor Doke, Edward, Antumani, Annie, Anna, the translators also, Ahmed, and Mary, for everyone also was putting the work to see this report come to fruition. The risk of not sounding redundant, I would just like brush over some of the key findings and the cross-cutting issues which we noted across the continent. So these issues are things which we at this point in time, like since it's for the want of time, we are not going to speak about the individual countries per se. We're just going to give a reflection of the cross-cutting issues as identified across the 5 regions of Africa. So this should take me probably 3 to 5 minutes. So one of the main issues is the peace and security challenges which we find on the continent, which Antumani was just speaking about right now. And this is mainly driven by radical Islamist groups like the Boko Haram in Central Africa and West Africa, the Jenim in West Africa, which is Jana Nusrat al-Islam in meaning we have ISIS in West Africa. Also in Northern Africa, we have the same thing. In East Africa, we have the Al-Shabaab, which is also doing cross-border attacks and moving downward also towards Mozambique. So we find that radical Islamist groups are a threat not only to West Africa, as some might think, or in Central Africa, but it's a wholly an African problem. And this is also particularly concerning because these groups are now more or less decentralized. And not only the radical Islamist group, we have other extremist groups. And if we're looking at it from the definition of terrorism or violent extremism, it's basically a group or anyone who tries to use violence to push political or social ideology. That is basically it. And most of these groups are now more or less decentralized. That is, there's no central command. So it's now becoming very tough in terms of how do you counter violent extremism when there is no central command, when there is no central ideology. That is very easy if you say we are tackling jihadists. Jihadists mostly more or less espouse radical Islamism. But now we find ourselves, even in Cameroon, we have extremists within Cameroon itself, within Nigeria, different groups with different ideologies, anyone operating with their own mandate. So it becomes challenging for the state as a whole in terms of grouping all of this together. So the state needs more or less a very comprehensive counter-extremism policy, That being said, we also proffer a tool like the African Union Transitional Justice Policy. That is an example which that is a model document which African states could use to address not only post-conflict issues, they can also address governance deficit and developmental challenges, such and also security challenges like this violent extremism. And this can be adopted to the specificities of the context in which the African states want to deal with. So that's a very important thing which we really call on an African state to do to focus. We also have issues like electoral violence. So even in areas where there is little or no radical extremist groups, we have seen that the fabrics of African states are very, very thin, and they are very susceptible to denigrate during electoral periods. Now we have Cameroon coming up with the elections. Last year we had Mozambique, and we saw that after elections there was widespread violence. So it's not like states are not prepared for this. States are prepared for this, but even as much as you can be prepared, no matter how prepared you are, African states have shown for a long time, especially states where there's been little power of the nations. It's been documented that during electoral periods, the state has a very high propensity to denigrate into violence. So like those are the issues which needs to be addressed. Those are the issues which threaten peace and security. So in essence, it's almost a bylaw that whenever elections are coming up, we are expecting violence in African states. We also have the issues of marginalizations, perceptions of marginalizations. This is also highly linked to issues of self-determination. These are also threats to peace and security. Across Africa, we look at East Africa and the Amhara region of Ethiopia. We have conflict in that region based on the issues of self-determination. We have the same things in the DRC, the Eastern DRC, the Goma region. We have the same thing we see it in Mali with the Tuareg rebellion. We have it in Cameroon with the Anglophone crisis. Across Africa, we have these issues where the manifestations of the rights of self-determination invariably lead to war, to protracted war, which is also a very prominent threat on peace and security. Dr. Doke had also spoken about the human rights and social justice issues, which are also very peculiar. Most times when we speak about SDG 16, we are mostly led to believe it's more about the political issues, about the strong institutions, but not. It also looks at the aspects of sociocultural integration. And this is particularly relevant on the African continent, given the migrant crisis which is brewing. In Central Africa alone has 4 countries which appear on the list of the top 10 most internally displaced and neglected conflicts in the world right now. So imagine a region on its own has 4 of the top 10 in the world. And this is occasioning a very serious migrant crisis, which it seems many African states are not dealing with. And given this issue now of cross-border terrorism, we can have jihadists or extremists who can pose as migrants and move between states. Like that is also one of the challenges. And another challenge is the treatment of migrants across many African countries. We keep on preaching about the dream of African unity, of regional integration, but African states are still finding it hard to integrate, especially with migrants. It's becoming a challenge, especially in many African countries where migrants have becoming the people to blame, the ones responsible for all the failures of the state. It's easier for politicians when they find themselves in a mix, when they cannot deliver on their campaign promises. It's easier for them to point the fingers towards migrants and say, these are the persons taking your jobs. These are the ones responsible for insecurity. So it's really a concern, but in the report, we really commend the government of Djibouti. It's going far and beyond in terms of protecting migrants, according migrant status, legal status, which is a model example for African states. We also push the idea for the ratification of the Free Movement Protocol in Africa. So far, about 5 countries out of the 55 countries on the continent have ratified that protocol. We continue encouraging African states to ratify the Free Movement Protocol, because this is also a precursor to social integration, regional and cultural integration, which is linked to the overall development on the continent. We also have the issue of the gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is also rife on the continent. We look at a country like Lesotho. Lesotho loses every year $5.5 billion on the issue of gender-based violence. Women face this violence, and sometimes their earning capacity is depreciated, which in turn also translates to the earning capacity of the state. Women cannot go to work, women cannot carry on their daily activities because of the violence which they have suffered. And we are seeing that this is also being exacerbated in areas where there is conflict. And we are finding this conflict sparse all around the continent. We are also finding it difficult for women, are also finding it difficult even during the migration journey. So even during from when they are migrating, in terms of the push factors when they are running away from conflict, women in the course of migration are also particularly vulnerable, women and children. Here, gender-based violence becomes really exacerbated. So this is a call, it's a point of call for stakeholders, for the African states, for developmental partners to address this issue of migration and how to protect women on the move. Speaking linked again to the issue of the violent extremism and socioeconomic challenges, we found that, and it's also very relevant, and it's found in this UNDP report of 2017 titled The Journey to Extremism. You can check that out, where that report, it showed that the primary cause for radicalization into violent extremism is not religious motivations. It's not because of these Islamist groups which come and preach their own version of the Quran, but it's more or less linked to socio-economic disenfranchisement. Many African youth do not find, do not find that their government are working towards their betterment due to issues of maybe corruption, mismanagement of funds. African youth cannot partake in the national cake. They don't have good access to livelihood. There is no good access to schools, hospitals, water, food, and the very basic necessities for a person. And this alone is the push. This is the primary reason why youth are radicalized. Finances. We saw cases in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, where for the promise of 100,000, 200,000 francs, which is basically almost $100, this is what youth maybe might work their whole for. I was lost for a minute. I think I'm back. So I was
Yes,
saying, we look at Niger, okay, where youth, for the promise of $100, this is something which some youth might work for the entire year, they will not get. But if they serve as intelligence officers for the Islamists, for the Islamist, radical Islamist group, and by giving away government positions, military positions, they are paid $100 to $200 just for one of such missions. So this is something which this is an amount which a youth might spend his entire year of toiling and hard labor, and he will not realize that amount. But just by giving away government positions, the armed forces, wherever they are, such that for them to be attacked by the jihadists, they earn this amount. So this is okay, guys. Okay, guys. I think I was having a little bit of a trouble. I don't know. Google, am I audible?
yes, please proceed.
Okay, yeah. So that was I think I ended on the note of the financial motivations which drive many youths into violent extremism, and we also have the issue of regional cooperation and external actors. I think the last 5 years, external actors have become really visible actors within the African continent. Prior to this, we saw a more diplomatic approach, whereby there was more of corridor diplomacy, But now this is really evident. We are now seeing
Recording in progress.
Yeah, okay. So we are now seeing Russia, the United States, China, and emerging actors like Turkey, who are having a stake in within the African continent. They are supporting their respective African governments. A good example would be Sudan. We had during this current Sudan, the crisis in Sudan at the moment, we have about 5 key actors who are out of Africa but are supporting the two different governments, which is the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, and the Sudanese Armed Forces, both led by General Hamdan Dagalo and General Burhan. So this is also an issue which is threatening peace and security on the continent, the foreign influence. We also have this issue of disinformation. We are seeing lots of disinformation happening within the context of West Africa, within the Central African region, from both key players, Russia, China, and the United States. So this is also something which needs to be addressed, and it's also a very particular challenge to peace and security on the continent. I think on that note, I would end now. I would not like to speak about everything which is on the report. I think by the end of this launch, we will have the report online for us to really read and look at all the key findings and engage in the discussions. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for having me. And I think that will be all for now.
Thank you very much for that. If I may please, before we move on to the Q&A session, if we can formally launch the report, if Dr. Doka can launch the report. Over to you, Dr. Doka.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. So with just to add on to what various speakers have stated regarding their findings. The first speaker mentioned the aspect of the conflict here in the northern part, which signifies how we as a country are also facing our internal issues, this inter ethnic conflicts, which are very problematic and posing a challenge for the state to resolve. And then the second speaker mentioning specifically the Sudan crisis, where a member did an interview with regards to some projections of what will come out. And rightly, I stated there may be a parallel government, if things are not handled well, and that's exactly what we are seeing. So thank you very much to the presenters for the work done with regards to the key findings. In every work or research such as this, findings highlight not only what exists, but also gives a glimpse of the many challenges and offers us the opportunity to come up with approaches with regards to the way forward. So with that being said, I hereby declare the report duly launched. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Doke. We now open the floor for interaction. Participants are invited to share questions via the chat. And I will direct these questions to our panelists, and including our keynote speaker and the research team. I'll just hand the Q&A session over to the colleagues. Thank you. Please feel free to insert any questions you have in the question and answer box. Thank you. I have a question in the chat for the panelists. How long did it take to have this report made, and what were the key challenges faced in the access to information?
Okay, I think I can take that. So the discussions for this report, we started having preliminary discussions on the, I think that was, which month was that? That should have been September of last year. Then we eventually commenced drafting of the report in November 2024. And then we finished the final drafting in March or April, in early April 2025. And then it went out for review, came back from review in May, and it went out to the designers in June. Then we are now at the launching stages. I think for the challenges faced, there were lots of challenges, especially in getting information, especially in also getting in having to engage with stakeholders. So I think one of the comments made by the keynote speaker, Dr. Ndoke, was about having primary information. I think we really tried. And also we found these difficulties because SDG 16 is a very peculiar, it's a very challenging topic, especially with African states. When it concerns strong institutions, democratic reforms, African states find it challenging to speak about that in public. You could have these backdoor discussions with these stakeholders, but for them to want to be cited, for them to want to address or acknowledge some of these issues publicly, it becomes really challenging. So having these people to partake with to support this was really difficult. So like I said, we could have these backdoor discussions. We could acknowledge that there are issues, but then transmitting them now in terms of report form, in terms of publishing them, they do not want to be cited. Like that was a very particular challenge. Also, was another challenge was about language, because when you're writing a report of such stature, and also given our work with states across the continent, our work with the African Union, the regional organizations like ECAS, ECOWAS, SADC, we also had to be mindful of some language to use. It's not, we could not make it a complete academic report. Like I think some of us from academia will understand you've got academic, should I say, privilege. But when you're working within a scene of within a diplomatic context where you have most of your partners at these diplomatic organizations and states, you also have to tone the language in terms of how are you criticizing, how do you bring out the issues, how do you speak truth to power, but while being sensitive to maintaining the relationship which you have with the state. I think this was one of the biggest challenges we face as a research team. But I'm happy we were able to find a way around it for us to have the report at the level at which it is right now. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just add to what Doc said right now about some of the challenges we went through when we were putting this report together. In addition to what he said, I think one of the challenges we went through was the conflict dynamics in Africa, because as you know, is a comprehensive report of all the regions in Africa. And as we move on, the dynamics were changing. So how to reconcile the new dynamic with what we have written, I think was also another challenge that we found during this work. Thank you.
Somebody asked whether it is possible for people to receive a copy of the report at some stage, whether that would be accessible.
Yes, I think by the end of the webinar, I think the report will be available online. Uh, Before the end of the webinar, I think it will be available online for everyone to download, free of charge and accessible to everyone.
I don't see any further questions. Maybe I'll give it another minute. If anyone does have a question, can you please type it in the chat? And would the report be online on the OneApp website?
Yes, it will be on both OneApp and CSVR's website. Just immediate. I think even before this, the communications team will share it within in the chat box for everyone to be able to access it if that's possible. So I'll just follow up with the communications team right now.
Yeah, Kati, I think my colleague has shared the link on the chat box. Well, for those who want to access the report, the link has been shared already in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think with that, I will hand over to my colleagues for the call to action and next steps. Thank you. Over to you. So as we move on, there are questions in the Q&A. If those can be answered. So there's as reflection to your comprehensive report, I find deliberate actions to strengthen NGOs and CSOs as neutral institutions one of the profound solutions to governance pitfalls. I think that's a comment. What strategies can be adopted as a way forward to strengthen governance, accountability, and sustainable development in the region, given the challenges in West Africa?
Yeah, so I think I hope is a question, right? Submitted in the chat box, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think after listening to some of the key challenges we highlighted, I think one of the ways in bridging the gap would be inclusive governance. Because when you look at some of the conflict we have in Africa, especially West Africa to be specific, I think most of them arise as leadership deficit. If people feel that they have been excluded from leadership, it also creates a sense of anger and frustration. And next to that would be, how do we strengthen our institutions? Because those who are supposed to provide adequate response to some of the challenges we face, if they don't have the requisite capacity, so it becomes a problem. So we have to also think in that direction, making sure that our institutions are well equipped to respond to some of the governance challenges we have in West Africa. Of course, talking also about how do we share the wealth? Because if people think that just only a few people who are in control of the national wealth, so that creates some level of disregard. So how do we make sure that our wealth are shared equitably so that all the region, all people at different level also benefits, from those wealth. These are some of the things, these are some of the comment or answers I can give when it comes to that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Just in the interest of time, I'll read one more question. This is specifically, hello everyone, thank you for your hard work. I would like to know what steps OneUp and CSVR plan to take to ensure that various observations can be monitored for their real impact on the daily lives of our people.
Okay, I think based on the work which CSVR does with OneUp, for a start, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, yep, okay. So I think based on the work which CSVR does with OneUp, we constantly engage with state institutions and regional economic organizations and the African Union. So most of these challenges would always come up within the context of our work with these stakeholders, with also international development partners. So we will continuously drum the recommendations which we have made which we have made in this report. We will transmit them to the stakeholders. And even in terms of our daily work also, we will try to incorporate this work as much as we can. Most of the recommendations within our daily work, we will try to incorporate it in our programming. But I think it's not only left for CSVR and OneUp, it's also left to you. You're also a stakeholder, be you civil society, be you regional economic community, be you African Union, or be you state stakeholder. Everyone has a duty. Everyone has a duty. So in the report, we outlined recommendations based on the key actors. We outline recommendations for the state actors. We outline recommendations for civil society and international development partners. We also outline recommendations for regional economic communities. So everyone has a job to do in making sure that Africa as a whole, we realize Sustainable Development Goal 16 in its totality.
Yes. So another thing is that,
Hello?
OneUp is spread across West Africa, and we have our national chapters. So I'm sure most of them are also on call right now. We're going to take the recommendations, the key findings and recommendations forward by having those one-on-one state advocacy visits and discussions where necessary, so that we begin to pull strings, places where we need action to be taken. So we're going to leverage our presence at the country level to do that. And also we have a very strong working relationship with the Regional Economic Community, ECOWAS, and we're going to ensure that this report is shared with them, and where possible, if we have any opportunity in the near future to brief the ambassadors from the West African region in ECOWAS, then certainly we'll make sure that we bring some of these key findings and recommendations into those kinds of discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those really important inputs. With that, I want to hand over for the closing remarks.
Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you. I am handing over for closing remarks from our Executive Director, Anna Moyo, and then Edward on your side. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Thanks, Edward. Over to you.
Kathy, did you just hand over to me?
Yes, please, for the next steps and the close.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have dealt with the topics decisively, and we have come to the close of this very important launch. It's so much good to see all our stakeholders also online. But let me take this opportunity at this point to express our thanks and appreciation to our executive directors and board members as well, and management who provided us the opportunity to work together. And also we want to thank especially Madam Anna Moyo, Executive Director of CSVR, for her patience and support. She has been online throughout this period. And we want to also say that your comments or statement is well noted and is very inspiring and very encouraging to us researchers and to us the staff who worked on this report. We want to thank you, ma'am, and we want to ask that you please continue to provide the leadership and the insight for us to continue to do great work for our continent. And also in absentia, we thank the ED of WANEP, Madam Levina Dimensa. As I said earlier, she was caught in between some partners meeting that actually came at last minute notification, but she is okay with what we have shared here. I've gotten to her and she's perfectly fine, and she also convey her greetings as well. So we want to thank her for that, and also continue to ask her to do what she does best with leadership for us to continue to do our work as well. And to our keynote speaker, Dr. Victor Duque, a friend and a brother, you have done us well and also done us proud this afternoon and morning in West Africa as time zones permit. Your presentation was really insightful, very informative as well. In fact, it even adds the icing to the cake. I'm sure by the time we get the report out and further conversations around the findings, the cost-cutting issues, and the recommendations would definitely be channeled on mainstream debates. You are also a very active voice in the region, and we hope that you can also use that to propagate or to share our findings and the content of this report as well. And we want to thank you so much for accepting to launch the report as well. And we appreciate your presence here today. And to our moderator, Kati, you have also done well. You've anchored well. And we want to thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for moderating this session. To the presenters and our research team and our support team and our communication team, we want to thank you all for this very important achievement. So let's continue to do the work we do, and then let's continue to ensure that we build peace and sustain it on the continent. This is just the beginning of many other efforts that WANEP and CSVR is going to engage in. So we are hopeful that going forward, we'll call you again for other discussions on other thematics, particularly with regards to peace and security on the continent. Thank you so much to our participants. Without you, this meeting would not have been a success. So you also been there. We've listened to your questions. We've answered some of them. Some we have not done. We have not answered well, probably the way you want them. But we believe that we are all in this together. So the reports will be available online. You can download and you can read. And I'm sure you can always reach at our colleagues, our communications department. If you have any other post-launch questions, you can always send them. We please find time to respond to your questions. So without wasting much time, we want to say thank you very much, and we wish you all the best.